The nominating committee this year has submitted two nominees, Victoria Winfield from Hastings and Joey Gaines from Omaha. Are there any other nominations on the floor? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to accept these two nominees.
So moved.
Moved, second. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Virgil. Now, if Dr. John Howe, our AVMA District 7 representative, would come up, he'll update you on what the AVMA's been up to.
Well, I'll try to be brief. I've only got about 45 minutes of speech to give this. But I want to thank everybody for your great hospitality. I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the winter meeting, but you had Dr. Canardi, the president-elect, made it, and the jury's meeting, of course, is the same time as yours, it seems, now, but next year also. But I really enjoy this meeting. Yesterday was great, 40 plays, made some new friends, and I think we might just start coming to the summer meeting instead of the winter meeting. I'd like to introduce my wife, Diane, if you could just stand up. So people can, I actually do have a better half. So there's a lot of issues at AVMA, a lot of great changes that have happened. There's going to be some exciting news at Boston. Anybody here going to make it to the annual meeting in Boston for AVMA? Great. So it should be real exciting. AVMA is kind of going to be rolling out a new brand and some new things. They worked very hard on some new ideas, some mission statements and vision and core values that we believe AVMA should have in the state. And one of the big issues, of course, that we face, that I get talked to a lot, and all the other directors do, is the rising cost of student education and how it's being so difficult for students to make ends meet, and what can the AVMA do about it, and why can't we control the price of tuition? And of course, the AVMA can't control the price of tuition. We can't control the number of schools that start up. I wish we could. You know, we can say we think it's very unwise to be building new schools when it seems there's 12% under, veterinarians could be used about 12% more than they are. But some areas are growing, some aren't, and economists tell us pretty much that if the economy would change just a slight increase, that we'd probably end up with a shortage again. So there's a lot of issues to deal with in this. And of course, the Council on Education comes under attack because when they accredit schools, somehow people think that the Council on Education should just not accredit schools, and that would solve the problem. But they legally can't do that. If a school meets all the beginning things to give probationary accreditation, they have to give it to them. But the AVMA and the Council on Education and the Board of Directors have gone some extra steps here to make sure that there's a total firewall. And we thought we had a pretty good firewall between the Board of Directors and the Council on Education, but it's gone even further. And so the Council on Education took some actions, and we took some actions, and the Council on Education had a subcommittee of members to review the Board of Directors liaison that we used to have, as well as policy regarding board members attending visits, which hasn't happened for a long time, where they've been on site visits. And they recommended that the AVMA Board of Directors no longer be included in site visits. And we recommended the same thing, so that's a done deal. And then no Board of Directors. There's also a nomination committee, the members that are going to be on the COE. And there were two people that were one was a past president and one board member, and they are no longer on the subcommittee. And then also that the Council on Education have its own attorney, not one of AVMA's attorneys, but have their own legal counsel. And so the Board of Directors voted to fund that. So there's no AVMA legal counsel, there's no Board of Directors, anything. They are totally firewalled, separate from AVMA, and we'd have it. I mean, I've been on the board, this is coming up on my 4th year, And we've never even, talked to COE members. We don't have any influence on what they do whatsoever. But now it's as firewalled as you can possibly be. So hopefully that'll satisfy a lot of people that think that there might have been influence from the board on any decisions they made, which there hasn't been. Anyway, I think it's a good idea, and it comes down to trust. And I think Dr. Ted Cohn, our current president, to him, and one of his big things that he believes in is that regaining the trust of members is very important, and I couldn't agree more. I think the trust of our membership is the most important. I mean, if you can't believe in the AVMA and that everything they're trying to do for you, I mean, AVMA's become very member-centric. So everything we've been working on is increasing member value. And how can we increase member value to our members and do more for our members? And that's everything we've been working on. Besides, you can't imagine the number of issues on welfare and all the committees and councils that there are. Another thing we did was we started a advisory panel. It's a pilot program, so now we're going to have an AVMA advisory panel. And this panel is largely the result because we have a very hard time filling vacancies, especially at-large vacancies in committees and councils. And that we've had some committees where we've had nobody apply to be on that committee for sometimes a year. And then we've had a few where we have one spot open and we had 35 people apply. So it's kind of a hit and miss thing. But this idea of getting an advisory panel will help fill the need where councils and committee silos don't address a lot of cross-cutting issues. And so the advisory panel can operate with the awareness of needs of AVMA diverse professional segments. And it'll create working groups with clear objectives. And we feel there's going to be more opportunities for the general membership. So a lot of you, and I think a lot of you, should be applying. Anytime you get a notice that says there's an opening for this committee or this committee, and you think, what do I have to offer? I'm no expert. Every one of you are experts. You shouldn't be thinking of yourself as not an expert in your field. The people that are on committees and councils are just, most of them are general practitioners, just like you. And I believe that I have the best district in all of the United States, District 6 or District 7, which is Minnesota, Iowa, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, and Missouri. So this is where all the common sense, common sense, know what all to do, what needs to be done. So I really encourage all of you, when you see openings, apply. Also on this advisory panel, it's not going to stop the committees and councils that are going to be a part of it, but just to give you an idea, the Council on Biologics and Therapeutics is in it, Clinical Practitioner Advisory Council, Council on Public Health and Regulatory Veterinary Medicine, Food Safety Advisory Council, Council on Environmental Issues, American Association of Large Animal, Aquatic Vet Med Committee, Council on Veterinary Services, Committee on Disaster and Emergency Issues, and lots of other subsets of members. So this group is going to have, there's two panels. There's one that deals with regulatory issues and one that deals with clinical regulatory or clinical practice. And so what this advisory panel will do is it'll incorporate a couple of members from each of those councils and committees, but then it's going to rely on the busy practitioner, the busy expert. A lot of people said, I just don't want to join a committee or a council because it's a 3-year term. It's 3 years, renewable again for 3, but you can finish it in 3. And so you say, I might not have the time for that, which is a couple of days, 2-3 days a year, 3 days at a time, twice a year. So it's not a lot of time, but you do have some phone conferences in between and some computer work. But if we can get your opinion on a hot issue as a busy practitioner or a busy expert, that's going to mean a lot, and that's going to help. So when you do your application for membership at AVMA and you check mark a box that says, these are areas I might have interest in, your name is going to be right there so they can highlight that and they can look, we need somebody that deals with this all the time. Or someone that deals, we need somebody to talk about compounding, large animal pharmacy, large animal drugs, or somebody that deals with poultry or swine. So if you've checked a box, you might be getting a call. So that's what we're looking for, is involving more in the general membership of AVMA. So there's a million things more I could talk about, but I'm going to cut it short because this is a very nice meeting and I don't want to ruin it for you. If you have any questions, though, throughout I'll be here the whole rest of the day, please come and see me. I've got cards if you want. I'll give you my personal email, cell phone number, so you can call me anytime. And I have been called by some of you on various issues, and I appreciate that because I'm here to serve you, do everything I can for you. So I appreciate all you do for us. Thank you.
The NVMA faced some major issues this year in the pharmacy and prescription drug monitoring areas. I'll just mention 2 or 3 bills here, but LB 37 was the biggest issue we faced this year. The bill had the potential to completely change the way veterinarians prescribe drugs generally and using compound drugs. After much work, Senator Christ and the Pharmacy Association agreed to amend veterinarians out of the Prescription Drug Safety Act. Additionally, the pharmacist agreed to add any person authorized to compound in the compounding provisions so that you didn't have to be a licensed pharmacist to do it. The compounding issue is not over for long, although at this point it appears we will get by and let the sleeping dogs lie. But LB 37 passed earlier in the session, will become law August 30th, so it's set up the way we wanted it, but that doesn't mean they're going to go back and readdress it at some time. LB 471 is also an electronic prescription drug monitoring bill introduced by Senator Sarah Howard of Omaha. It was introduced and included prescriptions by veterinarians. The bill did not advance out of the Health Committee, but Senator Howard had agreed to amend the bill if it moved to general file to remove veterinarians from the mandates of the Act. There continues to be a big push for electronic prescription drug monitoring, and we will have to watch this and other bills that may be introduced next session to ensure veterinarians are not included in legislation requiring electronic prescription monitoring. And lastly, we had several bills we went through, but the ones that took most of our time, the last one we touched on was LB 393, and that's a bill that provides for the protection and financial support of those involved in investigation of animal cruelty and neglect. LB 393 also authorizes the Director of Agriculture to appoint licensed veterinarians to serve as animal cruelty agents with the purpose of assisting local law enforcement in enforcing animal cruelty statutes among livestock producers. The NVMA testified in front of the Agriculture Committee in a neutral capacity to inform the committee that the similar bill that had been introduced the previous year that failed to show compensation and liability coverage for veterinarians. The NVMA opposed last year's bill due to these significant omissions. This year, LB 393 addressed both of those concerns, and the NVMA let the committee know we appreciated those additions because the animal welfare issue continues to be an area in the legislation addresses each year. It is important the NVMA be present and consulted when matters like this come before the legislature. LB 393 did not advance from the Ag Committee this session, but it'll probably be brought up next session. And one other thing we're going to look at this summer we're meeting, and the NVMA board has directed the legislative committee to act on the issue of temporary licensure for veterinary technicians. So we're going to meet with Mueller-Roback, who does a great job for us, and discuss how we'd approach that. And there's a Senator Kuhn from Hastings that's a veterinarian in the Senate, the legislature, and if we decide to propose a bill, we're going to have him sponsor the bill. So other than that, there's a whole list of bills that we go through and monitor that Mueller-Roback picks out for us that we just watch and monitor, and we see if there's any significant ones that we want to make sure the NVMA is aware of and take a position on. Other than that, that's about it.
Coming up here in July, the summer meeting, one of our 2 meetings that we have with the AVMA. There's several bylaws amendments and resolutions that we're going to discuss. Some of these are fairly minimal and some may be significant. The first one was a proposed bylaw amendment number 3, where they want to change the district directors. They just last year they changed it from a 6-year term to a 4-year term, and so we haven't even gone a whole year with that system. The idea trying to get more people involved instead of being in for such a long time, shorten it up, see if we can get new blood, new faces in there. They decided they want to try to change that back to a 6. And then also monkey with whether you could have, how many terms you could serve. And it was kind of felt that we should we should try this for a couple of years before or a couple of rounds before we make any more decisions again. We went through a lot of back and forth to get that changed originally, so we'd like to leave that at try the way that we just set it up. So that's kind of how we're going to proceed on that, just voting to leave it the way it is right now. The next one was on amendment number 4, which is has to do with council on research and who can serve on that, and they'd like to make that one, I believe that was the one that they'd like to make a little less stringent. As far as who can serve on, they don't have to necessarily be a veterinarian, but be involved with veterinary academia, and it's there again, I don't know that it's a real big issue, just trying to get the right people on there. The next one is a proposed bylaws amendment number 5, and making it more transparent so people know exactly what's going on with the Judicial Council. It's not a real big deal. Again, the Board of Directors and the House Advisory Committee were both okay with that, and the NVMA was okay with it. The next one was resolution number 7, which has to do with use of random source dogs and cats on research, testing, and education. The AVMA would like to get away from using random source if possible, but it's really difficult to do that, to be able to get a broad spectrum of animals to be able to do these projects on. So, right now the way it stands is that we need to use random source dogs and cats, but we need to make sure that we follow the right protocol on how we access those animals from the Class B dealers that we have to go through to get those. So we can't have people that are driving around town, picking up dogs and then selling them to some research company because, they found an animal that meets some criteria that they wanted. So you still have to be a Class B dealer, and they have to go through a licensing process. And, it's pretty particular on where they get their animals from and that kind of thing. We just don't have enough animals that are raised for just research processes to get the diversity that they need for some of these studies. So, and I don't know that we'll ever get there. But the AVMA would just try to say we'd like to get to that point, but right now we can't. So I think the Board of Directors and the House Advisory Committee were okay with that, as was the NVMA. And the next one was resolution number 8, which was a policy on veterinary pharmacology education for pharmacists. Basically, is a resolution that states they would like to have the pharmacy schools incorporate some animal medicine into their program for the pharmacists. It seems like a really good idea, at least it did to me, and it did to the Board of Directors and the House Advisory Committee, in that it would be nice if the pharmacists had some background in education in animal physiology, where they're filling these scripts for veterinarians. But it was brought up at our quarterly meeting that there were some people that felt like this maybe was starting to open the door a little bit to moving veterinary medicine in the way it is in human medicine, where doctors really can't give out the medications, and it all has to go through a pharmacy. And they really felt like this was maybe opening the door to that, which I never thought of, but I can understand where they're coming from on that. And so it really felt like if the veterinarian is going to use a pharmacist to provide scripts for them, that maybe they should make sure that the pharmacist is doing the background research that he needs to do or helping with that, rather than have it just be something that's incorporated into the pharmacy colleges. And I could see where that kind of made sense, and so we decided that Nebraska is going to vote against this pharmacology education for pharmacists. So, and they're feeling like we don't want to open the door to something that maybe they want to push later on with what they've been kind of dealing with that Walmart, we call it the Walmart bill. The next one was resolution number 9, which had to do with principles of veterinary medical ethics. They haven't got that one completed yet, so we'll see that one when it comes out. It's probably going to be more of a wordsmithing thing again. And then resolution number 10 was on voting transparency right now. I don't know if you're all familiar, but in the AVMA, when we vote on some particular issue, it's a weighted vote. So like California, Texas, New York, they may get, for their one person that's voting, they maybe get 28, 30, 35 kind of votes for their yes or no, whereas Nebraska might get 4. There's some really small states that may only get 1. So it's kind of a weighting voted. It's weighting voted the way they do it now, and so people would like it to be more transparent where we know how everybody votes, because sometimes people are telling you they're going to vote this way and they think they've got enough votes to get something passed, and then when the vote comes out, it loses by a landslide, and then nobody knows how anyone voted. So they'd like to make that more transparent. Everybody's okay with that as long as there was an amendment by the House Advisory Committee. They don't feel like we should be transparent on when we're voting on elections, like we vote for instance, who's going to be the next president. We don't know that should be public information for how a state voted there. So I think Nebraska was going to be okay with this the way that it was amended. So that people will be able to look up, like if you had some particular issue and you heard me talking about it, this is how I told you we were going to vote, and then it looked, that they didn't get enough votes, they can go back and look and see, you'll see, did Nebraska actually vote the way they were talking about voting. So it would there again, just wanted to be more transparent. Resolution 11, to establish a 1-year moratorium on all new accreditation actions. This is to, right now they're still trying to get that Council on Education thing squared away and figured out, where the big issue is accrediting these veterinary schools that seem to have a little bit different kind of criteria now than what they have in the past. And so the object of this is to not stop, like, for instance, Iowa State University from, if their accreditation is up, it's not to stop them from getting reaccredited. It's pretty much to put a halt on any new ones right now until we can get this Council on Education figured out and figure out what the criteria actually should be and how we're interpreting those criteria. That's where there seems to be a lot of what they call gray area. To me, they've tried to make it more flexible so that we don't have to necessarily go with all the old criteria they used to have, the old school way of doing it, that we need to be more modern and more open to things like maybe you don't need to, the colleges don't have to have clinics, that they don't really need to be the part of a university of higher education, or they get around some of those hurdles in ways that that most people don't think they really fit the criteria. So right now they want to just put a lockdown on that until we can get all that sorted out. And I think Nebraska's pretty much okay with that. And then resolution 13 is kind of on the same lines again, establish a veterinary education accrediting agency. So they would like to get an outside group of people that are helping interpret what these guidelines are and what those guidelines actually mean, and where they're getting the people to serve on the Council of Education. So it's very similar to the one previous to that. And I think Nebraska's okay with that one also. Anybody have any questions?
Thanks, Keith.